Behind the glitz of the NBA courts stands a man with a heart as vast as his talent. While headlines spotlight his spectacular plays and impressive stats, few know the Anthony Edwards who, away from the limelight, transformed a surprise visit to his new Minneapolis restaurant into a moment that would forever change the life of a struggling young waitress. This is the story of how the Timberwolves star discovered that his greatest impact might happen when nobody's watching. Enjoyed this story? Subscribe to the channel now to never miss inspiring stories like this and be the first to receive our new stories about celebrities who are changing lives away from the cameras. Snow fell gently over Minneapolis that January evening, blanketing the city in a pristine white coat that muffled the usual urban sounds. Anthony Edwards adjusted his cap low over his face and made sure his thick winter coat properly concealed his 6'4" athletic frame. At 23, as one of the NBA's biggest stars and the face of the Minnesota Timberwolves, anonymity was a rare luxury he cherished when he could get it. Especially now that his career was on a meteoric rise, drawing comparisons to Michael Jordan and averaging nearly 28 points per game this season. The previous night's game against the Warriors had been another showcase of his explosive talent: 41 points, 7 rebounds, and a game-winning three-pointer that had the Target Center erupting in chants of, "Ant-Man! Ant-Man!" But tonight, he wasn't looking for adoration. He sought something else entirely. Ant's Place, his new restaurant in the heart of Minneapolis, had opened just 2 weeks ago, an investment he had kept discreet without major publicity or explicit association with his name. The Southern-inspired menu paid homage to his Atlanta roots, but what made the place special in Anthony's eyes was its purpose. He wanted the establishment to succeed on its own merits. Good food, a welcoming atmosphere, and most importantly, opportunities for young people in the community who needed stable employment. That night, after a particularly exhausting practice, where Coach Finch had pushed the team harder than usual to prepare for their upcoming road trip, Anthony decided to make a surprise visit. Not as the owner, not as a celebrity, but as an ordinary customer. He wanted to see how his restaurant operated when nobody knew he was watching. He parked his custom Range Rover a few blocks away and walked through the snowy streets, feeling the temperature freeze his exposed face. His breath formed clouds in the frigid Minnesota air, a climate so different from his Georgia hometown. The restaurant had large front windows that emitted a warm golden glow against the night sky. Through the glass, he could see it was relatively quiet. A Tuesday evening wasn't exactly the busiest time, which suited his purpose perfectly. Taking a deep breath, Anthony pushed the door and entered. The warmth immediately enveloped him, along with the aroma of homemade spices, fried chicken, and his grandmother's secret cornbread recipe that he'd insisted the chef include on the menu. Soft jazz music played in the background, another personal touch he'd requested, remembering the music that had filled his childhood home. A young host, probably a college student based on his age, greeted him with a professional smile. He didn't show any sign of recognition, which Anthony took as a good sign that his disguise was working. "Good evening, sir. Table for one?" Anthony nodded, keeping his face partially turned down. "Something more private, if possible." "Of course. This way, please." The host led him to a table in the corner of the dining room, close to the staff service area, but away from most other customers' view. Perfect for discreetly observing the environment. The restaurant's interior was exactly as he'd envisioned during the planning phase. Warm wood tones, comfortable seating, walls adorned with subtle nods to Southern culture, and minimalist basketball motifs that wouldn't scream NBA player's restaurant. Anthony sat down and picked up the menu, pretending to study it while his eyes carefully observed the restaurant's operation. There were about a dozen other diners spread across the space, mostly couples and small groups, engaged in quiet conversation. The servers seemed efficient, moving between tables with a silent choreography. The lighting was appropriate, the music at the right volume. He smiled internally. At least the first impressions were positive. The business side of his brain, which had become increasingly sharp since hiring a financial advisor who actually educated instead of just managed, noted good table turnover rates and proper staffing levels for a weeknight. That's when he heard it. a muffled sound coming from the corridor beside him, which led to the bathrooms and kitchen. It was contained crying, the kind of sound someone makes when desperately trying not to be heard. Anthony froze, menu still in hand, ears attentive. His older sister Antoinette had made similar sounds after their mother's funeral, trying to be strong for everyone else while falling apart in private moments. Again, the sound, more distinct this time. It was definitely a woman crying, interspersing sobs with words he couldn't completely distinguish. Can't lose, the bills, her treatment, not again. Anthony discreetly turned his head toward the sound. A young waitress was leaning against the corridor wall, visibly trying to compose herself. Dark hair tied in a ponytail, impeccable uniform, but red eyes and trembling hands, holding a small piece of paper that looked like a bill or notification. She was black, maybe in her mid-20s, with the weary look of someone carrying too much weight on her shoulders, a look Anthony recognized from his childhood memories. Something in that scene deeply touched him. Anthony knew well the meaning of struggles and losses. He had lost his mother Yvette and grandmother Shirley to cancer when he was just 14, both within 8 months of each other. That pain shaped who he was today, influencing everything from his jersey number 5, chosen because both women died on the 5th day of the month, to his fierce drive on the court. Seeing the suffering so evident on the young woman's face awakened memories of his own journey. As he watched, the restaurant manager, a man named Ramirez, whom Anthony had personally hired based on impressive experience at several well-known Minneapolis establishments, approached the waitress. His words reached Anthony in fragments. "Third time this month, we can't continue. Professional environment. Our customers come here for a pleasant experience." Anthony felt a tightness in his chest. The manager seemed to be reprimanding the waitress, who was now hurriedly putting the paper in her pocket and drying her tears with the back of her hand. "I'm sorry, Mr. Ramirez. It won't happen again. I need this job, please. You don't understand how important." The manager cut her off with a raised hand. "One last chance, Morgan. Now get back to work. Table 7 needs their check, and 9 just got seated." The waitress, Morgan, took a deep breath, straightened her uniform, and forced a smile on her face before heading back to the dining room. Anthony watched as she resumed her work, serving tables with a forced energy that contrasted with the tears from moments ago. He recognized that smile. It was the same one he'd worn to school after his mother died, when teachers asked if he was doing okay and he said he was fine. It was the smile of someone barely holding it together. Anthony felt something shift inside him. He had come to the restaurant to check on the business, to see if his investment was running smoothly, but now found himself facing something much more important. What started as a simple inspection visit had just transformed into an opportunity to make a difference in a way that no spectacular dunk or game-winning shot ever could. His mind flashed to his post-game interview just last week when a reporter had asked what he hoped his legacy would be beyond basketball. He'd given some standard answer about community impact, but now the question felt suddenly, urgently real. And with that thought, Anthony Edwards, NBA star and discreet owner of Ant's Place, made a decision that would change more lives than he could imagine on that winter night in Minneapolis. He carefully pulled out his phone under the table and sent a text to his personal assistant. "Need info on a server named Morgan at the restaurant. ASAP. Don't tell anyone I asked." Anthony watched as Morgan moved between tables, her professional smile masking the pain he'd witnessed moments earlier. Years of reading opponents on the court had made him observant of body language. The slight tension in her shoulders, the way her smile never quite reached her eyes, how she absently touched what appeared to be a medical alert bracelet on her wrist when she thought no one was looking. He needed to understand her situation without revealing his identity. This required the same strategic thinking he used when analyzing game footage. After contemplating for a few minutes while pretending to read emails on his phone, he signaled for service when she passed near his table. "Excuse me," he said, keeping his cap low and his voice in a slightly different register than his usual media-friendly tone. "Could I get some recommendations? First time here." Morgan quickly approached, professional demeanor firmly in place. as she wiped away any lingering evidence of tears. Up close, Anthony noticed the dark circles under her eyes partially concealed with makeup, signs of chronic exhaustion he recognized from his own mirror during particularly grueling stretches of the season. Of course, sir. Our blackened catfish is incredibly popular, and the southern fried chicken is a house specialty. The chef uses a 24-hour brine that makes it exceptionally tender. Southern food in Minneapolis? Anthony asked, intentionally creating conversation while glancing at the menu. That's unexpected. A genuine smile briefly crossed her face, momentarily replacing the practiced one. The owner is from Atlanta. Brought some hometown flavors up north. The collard greens will take you straight to Georgia. Anthony suppressed a grin at hearing his own concept described to him. Good choice. I'm from the South myself. I'll try the chicken. And what's your name? In case I need anything else. Morgan, sir. I'll put your order in right away. When she returned with his water, Anthony noticed the small medical alert bracelet on her wrist more clearly. It appeared to be for a child based on its size, adjusted to fit an adult wrist. My sister has one of those, he said, pointing discreetly. It wasn't entirely a lie. A childhood friend he considered family wore one for her severe allergies. Morgan touched the bracelet self-consciously, as if surprised he'd noticed. For a moment, her professional mask slipped. It's actually my sister's. She's allergic to several medications and has complex medical needs. I wear it sometimes when she's in the hospital. Reminds me why I'm working so hard. Anthony felt a connection forming, not the superficial kind he often experienced with fans who saw only his public persona, but something more genuine. I'm sorry to hear that. Is she okay? If you don't mind me asking. Morgan hesitated, clearly torn between professional boundaries and the need to speak to someone. The restaurant was quiet, and something in Anthony's demeanor must have seemed trustworthy. Perhaps it was how he looked her in the eyes when speaking. A habit his sister had taught him was crucial for showing respect. She has lupus nephritis, Morgan said softly, glancing around to ensure no other customers needed her. It's an autoimmune condition that affects her kidneys. The treatments are expensive, and our insurance barely covers half. I'm working 3 jobs and still. She stopped herself, embarrassed. I'm sorry. You came here to eat, not listen to my problems. That was unprofessional. No, please, Anthony assured her, his voice gentle. I understand family struggles. Lost my mom and grandma when I was younger. Both to cancer, 8 months apart. Morgan's eyes met his with genuine empathy, the kind that comes only from someone who has experienced similar pain. I'm so sorry. That must have been incredibly difficult, especially so close together. It was, Anthony nodded, feeling a rare openness with this stranger. Changed everything. Had to grow up fast. But I had people who stepped up for me. My sister, my brother. They took legal custody. Morgan smiled sadly. It's just me and Lily. Our parents aren't in the picture anymore. Dad left years ago, and Mom, she paused. Mom's struggles with addiction made it impossible for her to care for Lily. She's only 16, and this disease has taken so much from her already. All these medical bills, the experimental treatments insurance won't cover. Her voice trailed off as another server walked by. Throughout the meal, which Anthony genuinely enjoyed, his chef had executed his grandmother's recipes perfectly. He gathered more pieces of Morgan's story. She was 24, had put her nursing studies on hold after completing 2 years at the University of Minnesota to work full-time after her sister's diagnosis. Their apartment was an hour's bus ride away, in a neighborhood known for its affordability rather than safety. The previous night, their heat had gone out, and the landlord wasn't responding to calls. Mr. Ramirez had threatened to let her go after finding her crying during shifts twice before. Once when she received a hospital bill for $17,000, and again when Lily had been admitted to intensive care. I've got 6 months left on a payment plan for the last hospital stay, she explained when bringing his dessert, a peach cobbler he'd specifically requested be on the menu. Just when I think we're catching up, something else happens. Yesterday, the insurance denied coverage for a new treatment that's showing real promise for cases like Lily's. As Anthony listened, he thought about his own sister Antoinette, who, along with his brother Antoine, had raised him after their mother and grandmother passed. His $260 million contract extension with the Timberwolves had ensured they would never worry about finances again. The disparity between his resources and Morgan's struggles felt impossible to reconcile. When the check came, Anthony left a $500 tip on a $32 meal, but knew it wasn't nearly enough, a Band-Aid on a situation that required major surgery. He watched as Morgan noticed the amount, her eyes widening in shock as she quickly glanced around to see who had left such a sum. As he walked out into the cold Minnesota night, Anthony's mind was racing. The bitter wind cut through his coat, but he barely noticed it. Growing up in Oakland City, one of Atlanta's poorest neighborhoods, without much, losing his mother and grandmother so young, and being raised by his siblings had shaped his understanding of struggle. But basketball had given him a way out, an opportunity most never receive. Sitting in his car, engine running to combat the freezing temperature, he pulled out his phone and made a call to his financial advisor, the woman who had helped him structure his contract and investments to ensure financial security beyond his playing career. "Hey, it's Aunt. I need to set something up. Something important." His breath fogged in the cold car as he watched Morgan through the restaurant window, carrying plates with that same forced smile. "And I need to do it without anyone knowing it's me. No publicity, no tax write-offs, nothing that connects back." "What exactly are you thinking?" his advisor asked, curiosity evident in her voice. Anthony's eyes remained fixed on the restaurant. "I'm thinking it's time to use this platform for something bigger than basketball, starting with one family, but not ending there." The seeds of a plan were forming, one that would extend far beyond a single waitress or restaurant. Anthony had always believed in using his platform for good, but now he understood that sometimes the most meaningful impact happens when nobody's watching, when there are no cameras to capture the moment, no social media posts to document the deed, no brand-building narrative to construct. As he started the car, Anthony made a decision. Morgan and her sister wouldn't fight this battle alone anymore. And this would just be the beginning of something much bigger than basketball. Much bigger than Anthony Edwards, the NBA superstar. This would be about the Anthony Edwards his mother and grandmother had raised him to be. The next morning, Anthony woke up earlier than usual, his mind already churning with ideas. After his 5 a.m. workout, a non-negotiable routine regardless of game schedule, he called an emergency meeting with his restaurant management team at his downtown Minneapolis apartment. His personal chef served breakfast as Anthony laid out his vision to the small group, which included his business manager, the restaurant's general manager, and Mr. Ramirez. Without revealing his experience from the previous night, he announced several immediate policy changes at Aunt's place. "We're implementing comprehensive health insurance for all employees working more than 20 hours a week," he stated firmly, looking directly at Mr. Ramirez, whose expression shifted from surprise to concern about the costs. "Full coverage, not the bare minimum. Dental, vision, the works." "Anthony, I understand your intentions are good," his business manager interjected, "but the restaurant industry operates on thin margins. This level of benefits could..." "We'll also establish an emergency assistance fund for staff facing medical hardships," Anthony continued, undeterred, "and flexible scheduling for those with family care responsibilities. No one gets penalized for taking care of their people." When Ramirez began to object about expenses and the impact on operational efficiency, Anthony cut him off. "I grew up watching my mom work herself to exhaustion at multiple jobs with no benefits. I saw what it did to her health. The profit margins aren't the priority here. The people are. That's non-negotiable." The room fell silent. Anthony rarely invoked his mother's memory, and never in business discussions. What he didn't share was that he'd already arranged to personally cover these costs from his own NBA earnings, ensuring the restaurant could maintain these benefits without financial strain. He'd spent half the night on the phone with his financial team setting up the structure. "One more thing," Anthony added, his voice softer but no less determined. "I want weekly reports on our staff's well-being. Not performance metrics, actual well-being. Who's struggling? Who needs support? What's happening in their lives that we can help with? Good business isn't just about the bottom line. It's about the people who make it possible." As the meeting concluded, and the team left with their new directives, Anthony's personal assistant stayed behind. "I have the information you requested," she said, handing him a folder. Morgan Williams, 24, sole guardian of her sister Lillian Williams, 16. Their mother lost custody 3 years ago due to substance abuse issues. Father unknown. Morgan was in nursing school, but took a leave of absence when Lily was diagnosed with lupus nephritis. They live in Cedar Riverside. Lily is currently receiving treatment at University of Minnesota Medical Center. Through further discreet inquiries from his foundation staff, Anthony learned more about Lily's condition, a severe form of lupus nephritis requiring specialized treatment that their insurance deemed experimental. The denial letters Morgan had been carrying were appeals that had been repeatedly rejected by the insurance company. The treatment, a new immunotherapy approach showing promising results in clinical trials, carried a price tag of over $190,000. Within a week, through a series of deliberately complex financial arrangements involving his charitable foundation, Anthony managed to establish an anonymous grant program specifically for young patients with Lily's condition at the University of Minnesota Medical Center. The hospital administrator was told only that a local business leader wished to remain anonymous. The grant would cover not only Lily's treatment, but also similar treatments for 5 other young patients in similar situations. Additionally, he arranged for an anonymous donation to cover Morgan's tuition when she was ready to return to nursing school, disguised as a scholarship from a medical association. 2 weeks after his visit, Anthony was reviewing game footage in his apartment when his phone rang. It was the restaurant manager. "Mr. Edwards, you won't believe what happened," Ramirez said, excitement in his voice. "That waitress I told you about, the one with the attendance issues? Her sister just got approved for some special medical program at U of M, fully funded treatment for the next 3 years. She was literally crying at work today, but happy tears this time." Anthony smiled, feeling a warmth spread through his chest that rivaled any game-winning shot. "That's great to hear. How's she doing otherwise?" "Completely transformed. Always on time now, incredible with customers. Actually, several customers have specifically requested her section. And those new policies you implemented? The staff morale has completely transformed. We've had 3 employees come forward about medical situations they've been hiding. They're actually getting proper care now, instead of working sick or injured." "That's exactly what we wanted," Anthony replied, trying to keep his voice neutral despite his satisfaction. "I have to admit, I was skeptical about how all these benefits would affect our bottom line," Ramirez continued. "But our staff turnover has already dropped, and customers are commenting on the positive atmosphere. It's like a completely different restaurant." After hanging up, Anthony sat in silence, basketball footage still playing unwatched on his TV. The satisfaction he felt was different from winning games. There were no crowds chanting his name, no highlights on SportsCenter, no trending hashtags. Just the knowledge that somewhere in Minneapolis, a 16-year-old girl was getting life-saving treatment and her sister could finally breathe. Over the next month, Anthony visited the restaurant twice more, always in disguise. Each time, he noticed Morgan looking less exhausted, smiling more genuinely. Once, he overheard her telling another server that her sister had been able to return to school part-time and was even talking about joining the school newspaper. But Anthony faced an internal struggle. Part of him wanted to keep his involvement completely anonymous, believing that true charity required no recognition. Another part recognized that as a public figure, revealing his connection might inspire others with resources to take similar actions. His platform could multiply the impact. The question came to a head during a team meeting about his personal brand strategy. His marketing team was pushing for more public charity events to boost his image. "Your Q scores are great with fans, but corporate sponsors want to see more community involvement they can align with," his agent explained. "A few photo ops at children's hospitals, maybe start a public foundation." "I already have a foundation," Anthony interrupted. "Yes, but you've kept it completely private. That's noble, but it's also a missed opportunity for your brand. LeBron, Curry, they've all leveraged their charitable work too." "This isn't about leveraging anything," Anthony said firmly. Some things should be done because they're right, not because they get you attention. The answer to his dilemma came unexpectedly during a post-game interview when a reporter asked about his community work. "You've been pretty quiet about your charity foundation lately. Anything new happening there?" Anthony paused thoughtfully before answering, remembering Morgan's face when she'd learned about her sister's treatment approval. "I'm learning that sometimes the most important assists don't show up on the stat sheet. Sometimes you just need to see a need and meet it without making it about yourself. The real MVPs are the people fighting battles every day that nobody sees. Single parents working multiple jobs, people caring for sick family members, kids growing up too fast because they have to. Those are the people who deserve the spotlight." The response generated curious headlines, but Anthony knew it was time to find the right balance between anonymous giving and public advocacy. A way to use his influence while keeping the focus on the cause rather than himself. That night, he made another call to his foundation director. "It's time to expand what we're doing," he said, "but we do it differently than everyone else." Spring arrived in Minneapolis, melting away the harsh winter and bringing with it new beginnings. The city seemed to exhale as temperatures rose above freezing, revealing patches of green beneath receding snowbanks. Anthony's Timberwolves were heading into the playoffs as serious contenders, riding a late-season surge that had sports analysts talking championship possibilities. But the transformation at Ant's Place had become equally meaningful to him. What began as a single restaurant with a new benefits policy had evolved into something far more significant. The restaurant now served as headquarters for a newly launched community table program, offering subsidized meals to families dealing with medical crises and hosting monthly fundraisers for healthcare access. Local chefs volunteered their time for special events, and medical professionals offered free consultations in a small private dining room converted for the purpose. What began as one restaurant's policy had expanded to a network of local businesses offering similar benefits to their employees. Anthony had quietly approached other restaurant owners in Minneapolis, offering to subsidize improved healthcare benefits if they would match a percentage. 12 establishments had already joined what local media had dubbed the Minneapolis model, though none knew the NBA star was behind it. 4 months after his first visit, Anthony finally decided it was time. After a home game victory against the Lakers, a playoff-clinching win where he'd scored 43 points, instead of his usual celebration with teammates at one of downtown's trendy night spots, he asked several teammates to join him for a late dinner at his place. The press, always eager for insights into players' lives, followed at a respectful distance. As they entered the restaurant, cameras flashing outside, Morgan, now promoted to assistant manager thanks to her exceptional work ethic and customer service skills, froze momentarily as she recognized the star player she'd been serving in disguise on multiple occasions. "Welcome to Ant's Place," she said, professional composure quickly returning despite her shock, though her eyes held questions. Anthony smiled warmly. "Thank you, Morgan. I think it's time we properly met. I hear you're doing amazing work here." The restaurant buzzed with excitement as diners recognized the Timberwolves players, but Anthony kept his focus on Morgan, whose expression shifted from confusion to dawning realization. Later that evening, after the initial commotion settled and his teammates were engaged in lively conversation, Anthony asked Morgan to join him at a quiet corner table. There, he explained how her story had moved him and the changes it had inspired. "The grant program at the hospital, that was you?" Morgan asked, her voice barely above a whisper. Anthony nodded. "Sometimes life gives you a platform for a reason bigger than yourself. I lost my mom and grandma to illness. Couldn't help them then. But maybe I can help others now." Morgan shook her head, processing this revelation. "Lily's been following your games religiously since her treatment started. She has your poster on her wall. She says you two have the same comeback spirit." "I'd love to meet her sometime," Anthony said sincerely. "She would absolutely lose her mind." Morgan laughed, then grew serious. "Why keep it a secret? You could have gotten so much positive publicity for this." Anthony considered the question. "When I was growing up, the people who helped my family the most weren't doing it for attention. They just saw a need and met it. That's the example I want to follow. He paused. But I'm learning there's a balance. Sometimes being public about giving can inspire others to do the same. The following week, Anthony arranged for Morgan to bring her sister to a Timberwolves practice. Lily, now healthier though still recovering, watched from the sidelines, her eyes wide with excitement as the players ran drills. Her disease had taken a toll. She was thin and moved carefully, but her smile was radiant. After practice, she approached Anthony shyly, holding a carefully wrapped package. "I made this for you," she said, presenting him with a framed drawing. It showed Anthony playing basketball, but in the background were shadowy figures of patients in hospital beds, watching and drawing strength from his performance. At the bottom, in careful lettering, "Some victories happen off the court." "This is incredible," Anthony said, genuinely moved. "You're really talented." "I have a lot of time in hospital rooms," Lily explained. "Drawing helps pass the time, and watching your games, it reminds me that comebacks are possible." That night, Anthony hung the drawing in his locker, right next to his Olympic gold medal and All-Star honors. When teammates asked about it, he simply said, "That's my most important assist." In the weeks that followed, Anthony worked with his foundation team to formalize what had begun as personal intervention. The Edwards Family Health Initiative was officially launched with a focus on covering gap treatments, effective medical interventions that insurance companies typically denied. The announcement was purposely low-key, with Anthony mentioning it only briefly in interviews and directing attention to the healthcare professionals and patients at the heart of the program. When asked by media about his motivation, Anthony shared the story of Morgan and Lily, with their permission, as well as his own experiences losing his mother and grandmother. "Basketball gave me a way out, but most people don't get drafted into the NBA. They need a different kind of assist." In the years that followed, Anthony Edwards' career would continue its meteoric rise. MVP awards, championship rings, scoring titles, he achieved it all on the hardwood. But his legacy extended far beyond basketball. Ant's Place became the flagship for a network of community-focused restaurants across the country, each implementing the same principles of employee support and community care. The medical grant program expanded into the Edwards Family Foundation, which specialized in funding treatments often denied by insurance companies. By partnering with medical institutions and other athletes, the impact multiplied far beyond what Anthony could have achieved alone. And Morgan? She completed her nursing degree with Anthony's support and eventually became the foundation's executive director, bringing firsthand knowledge of the challenges families faced. Her experience as both a caregiver and a healthcare professional made her uniquely qualified to bridge the gaps in the system. Lily recovered enough to attend college, where she studied art therapy to help other chronic illness patients express their experiences through creativity. The siblings remained close with Anthony and his family, a bond formed through shared understanding of loss and resilience. During his Basketball Hall of Fame induction speech years later, Anthony would point to the back of the room, where an adult Lily sat beside Morgan. "People always ask what I'm most proud of in my career," he said, his voice steady with emotion. "It's not the championships or the points. It's not the accolades or the contracts. It's the moments when basketball gave me the opportunity to change lives in ways that don't show up on any scoreboard. The greatest victory isn't winning games, it's using your position to help others win their own battles." He paused, looking at the drawing from Lily that had been enlarged and now hung permanently in the Hall of Fame's exhibit dedicated to his career. "My mother and grandmother taught me that our true worth isn't measured by what we achieve for ourselves, but by what we do for others. They didn't live to see me play in the NBA, but I hope they'd be proud of the assist that started in a restaurant on a snowy night in Minneapolis." In that city, a plaque now hangs at the entrance of the original Ant's Place. It reads simply, "Sometimes the most meaningful impact happens when nobody is watching, but sometimes people need to see it to believe in what's possible." The restaurant continues to thrive, serving Southern comfort food with a side of community support. And in hospitals across the country, patients receive treatments they once couldn't afford never knowing that it all began because an NBA star in disguise happened to hear a waitress crying. Enjoyed this inspirational story? Don't forget to subscribe to our channel for more uplifting content about your favorite celebrities making real differences in people's lives beyond the spotlight.